Substituted some of my own words. I'm Bill Hatton with Shared Expertise, and I'm here to introduce the next speaker, first one of the morning. Speaking with Neil, and we're getting like right into it, you know, digging into the compliance, and there's a lot to this. One thing that he said last night was that it's not so much that the regulations are new, it's just that there are so many people conducting oversight and want to know what you're doing. So with that, Neil Bommery is Vice President of Global Strategy and Solutions at ICON Professional Services. It's headquartered in San Francisco, but you come from Denver, and we're delighted to have him come out here to speak with us.
Okay.
So please welcome Neil.
You guys wouldn't be applauding if this was a round table. So we got about half an hour, or just slightly less. So the agenda is a little bit aggressive for that amount of time. So I might speed through some things. If you want to, just stop and we'll talk about whatever we're talking about. As mentioned, I'm Neil Bommery. I've been in this industry more or less for my whole life. Independent contract compliance for a couple of years. I represent a company called ICON Professional Services. We've been doing this business for 18 years, headquartered in Foster City, California, which is just south of the San Francisco airport. We're unique in the marketplace in that we're based on a technology solution. It's an application that does the vetting and validation of independent contractors and integrates well into ATS or VMS. We built our system with Littler, validated with KPMG. We're vendor neutral. We're not owned by a staffing firm, but we partner with virtually all the MSPs and large staffing as well. So let's just, and you guys don't care that much about that, so let's talk about this. How many people know what an independent contractor is? Okay, I got 3 hands. All right. At the end of the day, we call it a bunch of different things, right? We call it freelancers. That's the new word, or old word renewed. Everybody's using that term, but it's none of these words matter. It's a tax relationship, right? It's the difference between reporting taxes on a W-2 and reporting taxes on a 1099, and that's determined more than anything else by how much you control that asset, that human capital asset. They're cheaper, right? Calculate the difference between your payroll and the markup on a independent contractor. You're looking at 15–16%. Right? So they're a cheaper resource. They're usually better, right? You identify these individuals because they know what they're doing. Senior, they have specialized skills. But there's a worry here, right? 46% of your ICs, people in your buildings, are misclassified, probably. If you don't have a program, certainly. And you can spend a lot of money fixing that. If you're caught in an audit, it's an enormous, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's an enormous cost. You can have your name in the paper. Right? It's the worst case scenario for a lot of companies. And class action lawsuits can lead to a huge amount of money. We're getting on 20 years now towards the Microsoft case, but it still matters in this context. It's not just the IRS. And the IRS uses a certain set of criteria to judge whether or not an individual is an independent contractor. There are 90-something agencies that can come into your building and identify whether or not the workers you have classified as independent are independent or not. Right? So it's federal and state tax agencies, federal and state labor agencies, and a bunch of other random ones. City of San Francisco, for example, has the authority to do that. The IRS uses a concept called the 20 factors, which is really just an enumeration of these pieces here. So behavioral control, financial control, and the relationship you have with that individual. The states use what's essentially an ABC test or an economics realities test. That argues that if a person is totally dependent on your organization for their income, they're in fact an employee, irrespective of everything else. The other part of this is for the federal, for tax purposes, you can be considered independent, but for employment purposes, like workers' comp, you can be considered an employee. So the complexity here is quite large. There are also some international agencies that can audit in specific industries. And all those agencies talk to each other. So I know this is an eye chart, but I wanted to give you a feel for this. So the states in blue share information on their audits with the IRS, and the IRS shares their audit information with the states. The federal government also, through the DOL, has issued unemployment insurance grants to step up the enforcement of independent contractor classification. Those are the green states. The red states have both. And just to add some fun, the states outlined in yellow require that you inform the state when you engage in an independent contractor, irrespective of how and for how long. Those are basically deadbeat dad laws. Does that make sense? And it's expensive. So last year, almost $500 million in fines and penalties were levied for worker misclassification. $500 million, right? Some states have scarlet letter laws, where you have to put on the front of your website that you were caught up in a misclassification and that you were found, that you accept guilt. How would you like that? Make that call, right? Look, I mean, a lot of this is not because you're not paying taxes. A lot of this is because there are organizations that exploit workers, right? Call centers where they don't pay any taxes on it, where they don't pay any overtime, where they don't pay any insurance. And where companies are trying to hover below the 50-person mark in order to avoid ACA.
Are you defending the IRS here?
I'm not.
Just kidding.
Are you from the IRS?
I guess. I
Pick up, my
guess to some
microphone's not
extent,
picking up.
I'm not defending the IRS, as a matter of fact. The IRS is really just interested in the money, right? Where's my money? Give me my money. That's what the IRS cares about. That's what, you know, the Departments of Revenue in the UK, Canada, and Australia, that's what they care about. But the DOL's sort of goal here is a little more noble, right? It's to prevent the exploitation of workers who really don't have a choice in what they're doing. And that's, to me, is a little bit, like, let's put the money there. So that's, I'll get down with that. So, how many people have ICs in their building right now? How many people don't know? By the way, the answer is all of you. So, we have never come across a program where ICs do not represent less than 10% of the overall contingent labor program. Right? So if you have 100 temps in your building, you've got at least 10 ICs. And most of the time it's a lot more. Most of the time it's 30%. That's our average. We've seen sometimes 50%. And I'm not talking about your formal MSP or even your on-site staffing organization. I'm talking about all the non-employee workers, right? You count up all the people that come into your building, right? This guy waters plants, does your accounting, provides your security. You add up all those people who are badged in, who aren't employees, we're looking at a number more like 30%. So if you're a big company, you've got a lot.
But if they're doing similar work for other organizations,
Well,
like a landscaper,
yeah,
that's,
you would think. The problem is, this is the problem. So sure, that's a good argument. The IRS buys that argument. State agency doesn't. Right? There's a department store in Southern California that each year employs a guy, just a guy, to hang their Christmas tree. He's there for like 3 days. He picks the tree, brings the tree in, or has the tree brought in, decorates the tree. The California equivalent to the Department of Labor calls him an employee for no earthly reason that anybody can figure out, but tough, because there's no place to go from there. If that auditor decides that person is an employee, they're an employee. It's the end of it. So you would think, but, you know, maybe. Actually, let's talk about that for a second. So yes, if you follow the IRS rules, the 20 factors, independent contractors ought to have some sort of entity. They ought to pay taxes. They should have more than one customer. They should be able to come and go as they please. They should be able to substitute the individual that is doing the work.
invoice the work.
they should invoice their work. I mean, the mechanism is true. But, you know, again, it doesn't have to be milestone or hourly, those could both work. But it should demonstrate independence, right? Lack of control by the engaging entity over that individual. But yeah, and that's really what our system does to a great extent. It takes in the state and federal laws and tries to make sense of them across this kind of chaotic landscape. So there's 30% of your non-employee workers, they hide in statement of work, they hide in IT in a big way. And then they hide in outside service providers, which, you know, effectively they're firms that pretend to be solutions consultants. In fact, they're basically staffing. That's where you find a lot of leakage in your formal contingent labor programs. So as a result of that, we generally recommend putting programs that have 2 or fewer individuals that are W-2'd in through their program. Questions there? Okay, so here's some impacts. You thought you did everything right. You followed a course of action where you checked boxes and determined that individuals were independent. You filed your 1099s and you did not try to lie to the IRS. They decided that that population was not independent. They were your employees. You're going to pay approximately 11.4% of their salary as a penalty, right? And that's based on an increased level of contribution on Medicare and FICA and so on, and state taxes as well. Remember this source of information, this source of group, this people right here?
Back that up a second. 11% of the people that you gave W-2s to?
No. 11% of the amount of dollars you pay to the misclassified workers. So if you had a $100,000 guy, you're going to owe the IRS $11,000 or a little bit more. But remember over here, this guy and this guy, you didn't issue 1099s to them. So now you're in the next pile. You still didn't try to lie, but you didn't issue a 1099 and you thought you were doing everything right. If you try to lie, you did it for deliberate fraud, the number goes very, very high. Doesn't include state stuff either, right? So if 6.2 is the average state tax, you're going to add 6.2% to these numbers. So that $100,000 guy that you thought you were getting a big bargain on, instead of paying $120 for payroll, now you're paying $146,000. Here's the other problem that arises. As soon as that person's reclassified as an employee, you owe them medical and dental and stock plans, vacation and holiday that you didn't pay them. You owe them a bunch of money. It's a big number. So
In arrears.
Right.
In
Or how far
arrears.
back, right.
So
Till the day they were.
over here and here, the IRS is going to look back 3 years, right? But they're really going to look back 3 years every time they find someone in the past, right? So this could go on pretty far back. This could go as far back as 10 years. Keep your records up. I didn't mention that.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I've seen organizations try and have the contractor sign an agreement that specifically says, even if we get found, we're not going to be, you agree that we're not going to owe you medical, dental, stock. Does that impact you at all?
No. No. The argument is, oh, I was told I wasn't an employee, so I believed I wasn't an employee. So it works in the temp world quite well, right? Supplemental staff, someone's paying the W-2, someone's providing some benefits, and in that context, the co-employment risk is lower. But in this case, the guy literally moved from one pile to the other, and there's stuff in that pile the guy wants, presumably, and you get class action lawsuits as a result.
Excuse me, a question.
Yeah, sorry.
If you have an IC who is correctly classified as an IC,
Yes.
and then you decide to hire them,
Yes.
do you still owe that back?
No.
Okay.
No, you change the conditions of their employment, or their engagement. I shouldn't say no, because in theory, you're still subject to audit for the period of time you engage them as an IC, so the IRS could say, right? I will suggest that it's always a bad idea to issue a 1099 and a W-2 to the same individual in the same year. That's an audit trigger. Anybody know what the #1 source of audits are? Like what triggers them?
Previous track. Previous return.
No,
Unemployment?
unemployment insurance. A lot of what happens is folks don't really understand that they're not participating in that part of the system. And so their engagement ends, they don't have a new engagement lined up, they go file for unemployment, right? And it's a little worse than that because you get a scenario, where did you last work? Well, I worked at Bobco. Oh, okay, were you employed? Yeah, I was employed. And before Bobco, I was at Smithco. Oh, where were you there? I see. Well, let's go talk to Smithco. Because I don't think you were, because your job title says machine, material handler. So. Before I go solve this for you, any questions on what you're facing? Do some math in your head, right? Like, think about what your contingent labor program looks like and sort of figure out your exposure if you don't have a formal program. You should be able to answer this question. There's a tolerance level, right? Costs $5 million to put in a program. It doesn't, but pretend. Costs $5 million to put in a program, but my total exposure here is less than $1 million a year. Should I put in a program? Right? Some of it's reputational, so how do you put a number on that? But know that number, right? In your roles, know that number. Assume the lower level. Not too many people are going to figure you're doing it on purpose, and then multiply it by 3. Look at the years that you had. When was the last time anybody did this? Just to see who's in your building. I see nobody's done this. Do this. Look for non-zero values in box 7. Look for things that look like that's the same as the name of the individual being compensated. You'd be surprised the number that you'll find. You'll also find weird things like, I don't understand why, Janice Dickens is working with, Fred Dickens. Like, how did that happen, right? Let me go back to this for a second. So I have a customer, who, it's in oil and gas, so they're mavericky anyway. I'm sitting across from him, and he's got some sacred cows. He's got people that I can't touch. And he says, give me my total, what's the most I could possibly pay? I'm like, $30 million, right? He says, that same group of people made me $4 billion last year. I don't care. Okay, I can't help you. I can't make a program that makes you care more about 30 million than $4 billion.
Can I ask you a question?
No. Okay, yes.
Maybe it's because I haven't had a lot of coffee this morning, but you said assume 10% for
Yeah.
federal fines, and a minute ago we were talking 11 to 14% of salary.
Yeah, not all of the people in your population are going to be misclassified.
Okay.
Just, you need a number in your head that kind of works with what you have. Look, some of them are going to be categorized here and some here. No, really, unless you're really just a bad actor, nobody's going to be over here.
Yes.
So if you look at your population, let's say you've got 100 guys at 100,000 each. So you got a $10 million program. Assume you're at $1 million.
Also makes the math easy.
Yeah, it also makes math easier. I'm all for easy math. The other place, especially in statement of work, look at your contracts, make sure that the flow downs are correct. You can do counts that way too. There'll be people that don't show up on 1099 run that are really just, Neil Baumray LLC, right? You need a denominator, so figure out what your cost of payroll is. Because that's how you're multiple rather, how you're gonna figure out how much you might owe as well. And then look at these sources, right? Look at your IT department. If you guys have formal badging programs, that's also a good place to start. And remember, you're just gathering data at this point. You're trying to answer this question, you're not solving it.
What did you say about formal badging again?
If you have formal badging, right? If you have like a badge that is issued to non-employed workers that somehow identifies them as non-employed workers, if you guys use Workday or something like that, you'll be able to identify those folks that are coming into your building at least. You may not see your remote workers, but at least you'll see the people who have access to systems and buildings. The other source, and this is coming up a lot, is in your contingent labor supply chain. People are submitting ICs and you may not know it. So you need one of two things. You need either, it's forbidden, that's the most common path. But certain industries can't allow that, you won't find the folks if you do. So you need to figure out what your process is gonna be and have your suppliers follow. If you're using a third-party vendor, make them use the same third-party vendor. And the tough part is, how do you know, right? You gotta ask them. You gotta formally ask your suppliers whether or not they're giving you ICs. And if they lie, then that's a good way to get out of your program. Okay, so the quick math, right? Take your spend, do some voodoo here to figure out whether or not you've got a bunch of S corps and C corps in there. Estimate your spend, multiply by 12%, I changed my mind. 12%, add the state if you wish. Certain states have very high levels. But as I mentioned before, the average is 6.2%, so you might want to consider using a number that's more like 15 or 18%. And then is it big enough to care about? If it is, then do something about it. So what you should do is build your business case to sell this internally, to have someone care about this, right? So as I said, enumerate your risk. What can you do about it, right? There are firms whose sole purpose is to estimate post-catastrophe damage. Everybody they employ are ICs. Their whole business model would fall apart if they tried to employ W-2s. Couldn't do it. So for them, doing something about it would mean going out of business. They can't do that. So they're just gonna take it, right? Hopefully they shield their own personal assets. Figure out who is going to be your exec sponsor. This is important. No program wins without an exec sponsor. Nobody. They just can't get it done. And do I need help doing it? Okay. By help, I mean me. One of the tools we use is this. We use 5 variables. It's cost of ICs, number of ICs, cost of external payroll, cost of internal payroll, and where are they? And then we lay it out as a business case, and we look for things like, and then it's been really driven by this difference between cost of payroll and cost of IC management. That's this number here, IC management, AOR. You guys know what that is? It's agent of record services. Essentially, the firm handling your IC management stands between you and your population of ICs and is a payment distributor, but it also acts as a risk mitigator. So it provides ongoing compliance. There are a lot of firms, there are law firms that do this a lot, where they'll say, yep, today, Vivek and I are in a business relationship where he's an independent contractor. But tomorrow, I ask him to cover the phones because I got no one in the office and we're having a picnic or something. You know what happened? He's not an independent contractor anymore. So the AOR service that is provided by us and our competitors is a way of maintaining that ongoing compliance. So add up all your numbers, right? I gave you the easy math. Here's the hard math. Figure out what's my savings, what's my cost avoidance, what's my 3-year look back. Okay? We got like 2 minutes. Questions before I got one last thing. I was hoping I could guinea pig you guys on a commercial, Sean, if that's okay with you, to see what your reaction was. But before we do that, it's only like a minute long, but before we do that, any questions overall on this?
We're a home building company, so we have, 300 communities that we're building homes in all over the United States. In those communities, the homes are built by subcontractors.
Yeah.
And so if you walk onto a Toll Brothers site, we might have 8 employees, but there could be 1,000 people building homes.
Right.
Now, all of those subcontractors, of course, are registered subcontractors, which is, I think we have 10,000, something
Sure.
like that. But we don't necessarily know, and in many, many cases, I would assume the vast majority of cases, they're legitimate subcontractors. They work for other builders. Let's say it's, machine drywall company.
Sure.
They aren't hanging drywall just for you, they're hanging it for a lot of companies.
Sure.
But I'm imagining that we wouldn't know necessarily if we were the only company that they were working for. And if that's the case, I presume there's an issue.
Kind of. So if we're talking about a person or a couple of person firm, there's some risk. If you're talking about a firm that has 30 employees and does drywall, even if they're pretty much only doing it for you, you're okay.
Right.
Right. Bear in mind, I'm not a lawyer, so don't assume that this stuff is golden. But in my experience, you're okay.
Right, and maybe they're working for you exclusively on this one particular community right now, but
Well,
another
you're keeping them
builder
so
starts
busy,
another
right?
community.
You could theoretically be keeping them so busy going from community to community that they really
Right.
don't pursue other business. I mean, it's bad business process, right? They're putting themselves at great risk, but I think you're okay there. Where I would worry if I were you is whether or not they are using independent contractors. Here's what the government's decided. The government's decided that the end user, the end recipient of the service, irrespective of how that service got delivered to that end recipient, is responsible to ensure compliance. So Walmart fought a case, they won, but they fought a case for 9 years because their landscaper was employing independent contractors to deal with their parking lots. 9 years they had to fight this thing. They won, but at what? Like, how was that even worth it? They should have written a check on the first day. They'd saved $10 million. In Silicon Valley, there was a,
But they then had to go and, what did they do then?
they had to hire, so
They had to
well, the
hire-
landscaper went out of business. to be fair,
Landscaper
but-
would have had to hire all their
That's
independent
right, and
contractors.
pay them back benefit and all that. The other piece, the other case that came up fairly recently is the Arise case. They provided tech support, phone support for Apple and a few other companies. They were doing that sort of evil DOL thing, where they were paying people basically under the table. They were ICs with 1099s, but they were paying them basically under the table. Apple and the other firms involved had to fight that thing for like 3 years. Yeah, they didn't lose in court, but they lost everywhere else it mattered. They lost in the newspaper, they lost in how much they had to spend on lawyers. You know, whoever hired that firm to deal with this probably didn't last out the year, right? It's problematic when your suppliers aren't compliant, and it's something that you should consider, not only actually auditing these guys to see if they're compliant, but making sure it's enumerated in your contracts with those guys.
So I work in employee motivation, and with the enormous move towards independent contractors, I think in recent years, 65% of all hires, the kind of a rule of thumb is, as much as possible, treat them like an employee in your orientation, in your communication, in your involvement in team activities. Where should we draw the line?
Just don't do it.
Just have it unmotivated and.
Look, there's extremes, right? So there's
Unmotivated and safe.
look, there's a difference between this worker and your contingent temp worker, right? I worked in Atlanta for a while and went to a Yamaha engine plant, and very big contingent labor program. Walked in the room and like everybody's got this awesome Yamaha shirt and they're like t-shirts and they're all great. And I look over there and scattered through the room, and then in big populations in the corners are the same shirt but like bright orange. And one of these guys turns around and on the back in letters this big it says temp. Don't do that either. But don't give them an email. Don't give them don't do that. There's some exceptions, but as a general rule, don't treat them like employees because by definition they therefore are. So. Any other questions?
I have a
Yeah.
question for you, based on earlier comment made on this question was that second level.
Yeah.
So what's your responsibility to that person and those individuals because you're supposed to be one removed. A statement of work says one thing,
Yeah.
this is my set of contractors. What they do to get the job done really isn't my responsibility.
Right.
And you don't want it to be your responsibility. But if they're not treating their,
Yeah, so if your suppliers are treating them like an employee or failing to deliver the required benefits or compliance, yeah, you're on the hook. You can be on the hook. It's not automatic, but you can be on the hook. Oil and gas is getting in trouble left and right in North Dakota, right? None of those people work for those big oil companies, but every one of those big oil companies is being named. It's not Fredco staffing of Fargo, right? It's supplier to Hess Oil was found, right? It's I don't know how much tolerance your particular organization has for that, but it's a big problem, for a lot of, especially public companies. So.
we only have a problem in California.
Well,
We don't have a problem in any of the other
well,
states.
the good news is New York has now surpassed California as the most pain in the ass state. So last year, do you remember the number? It's like 178,000 people were reclassified as employees from independent in the city of New York last year. 178,000. That's a crazy number. Think about how many auditors they must have on the street to pull that off. So, we obviously don't have time for the commercial. Very sad, it's a great commercial. But thank you.
Showdown.